Hello and welcome to the Happier Life Project, brought to you by the free, award-winning mental health and wellness app, My Possible Self. I'm your host, Gabby Sanderson, and this is the podcast that explores the science, psychology, and real-life strategies for living a more fulfilled and mentally resilient life. Have you ever found yourself tugging at your hair, or picking at your skin, or maybe biting your nails without even realising it? Or maybe it is something that you're conscious of. It started as a nervous habit, but over time it became something more, something harder to control. These hard-to-control compulsions fall under the category of body-focused repetitive behaviours, or BFRBs. And they're far more than just bad habits. BFRBs include conditions like dermatillomania, which is skin picking, trichotillomania, which is hair pulling, nail biting, lip chewing, and even compulsive nose picking or cheek biting. While they're very common, they can also be distressing and in some cases severely impact a person's mental health, self-esteem, and daily life. To help us understand what BFRBs really are, why they happen, and how to manage them, I'm joined by Nathan Peterson, a very experienced licensed therapist specialising in OCD, anxiety, tics and Tourette's, and various BFRBs. With years of experience working in mental health clinics, hospitals, schools, and his private practice in Texas, Nathan has dedicated his career to helping people navigate these challenges. He also runs a popular OCD and anxiety YouTube channel, providing education and hope to millions of people. In today's episode, I chat with Nate about what makes a BFRB problematic. Is it a symptom of something deeper, such as anxiety, depression, ADHD, or OCD? Or rather, is it an isolated problem? Are BFRBs hereditary? Can the repetitive compulsion, whatever it may be passed down to us? We also look at the connection between skin picking and perfectionism, along with the deeper psychological and emotional factors that drive these kind of behaviours. Plus, we take a closer look at the role of compulsions and frustration in maintaining BFRBs. How can they be treated? Or perhaps even accepted? And Nate shares some fantastic practical strategies for managing and resisting the urge to pick, pull, bite, or chew. If you or someone you know struggles with BFRBs, please do stick around. We're breaking the stigma and diving into the real, evidence-based solutions. So, ready to find a healthier, happier you? Let's get started. Welcome to the Happier Life Project. Nathan Peterson. Do you prefer Nate or Nathan?
Yeah, either one works. Nathan, Nate.
Okay.
A lot of people call me Nate.
Nate. Okay, well, let's go with Nate. So when I reached out to you, I initially was looking to speak to somebody who was an expert on skin picking and hair pulling, and we can say the fancy names for these as well. And tell me if I'm butchering this. Dermatillomania and trichotillomania.
Yeah. Some people call it dermatillomania or excoriation disorder.
Okay. Wow.
And so I think that might be more, the more recent term.
Okay. Well, then when I started to look at you and your content, then I learned about the overarching, I suppose, umbrella, which is BFRBs. So then I
Hmm.
thought, actually, I think it would be good if we could broaden it out to discuss body focused repetitive behaviors, because then this, I think, includes more people, even though it's all coming from the same kind of hub, if you will.
Definitely. I mean, I think the most common are hair pulling and skin picking,
Mm-hmm.
but there's, cheek biting, there's nose picking, there's so many different things that would be considered a body focused repetitive behavior.
Right. So it's basically something that you do to yourself repetitively. So spot picking, I suppose that falls under the skin picking, does it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay. Can we kind of start by introducing this subject, first of all, in terms of body focused repetitive behavior? Is it just something, I guess, that like, I don't want to say we're born with, but it's just something we either struggle with or we don't struggle with?
Yeah, I think most people at some point in their life will probably pick a scab or a pimple or maybe pluck a hair or, things like
Yeah.
that. But it's just kind of a one-off type of thing.
Yeah.
For somebody who struggles with a BFRB,
Mm-hmm.
it's a little bit different. Their brain that's actually wired just a little bit differently. They used to be part of OCD and they've separated it into its own diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
But what makes it different is that they might feel an extreme urge to do this behavior, whether it's picking or pulling. And sometimes they're ruminating so much on it that ruminating meaning I am thinking about it so much that I have to do it to get this feeling to go away.
Mm.
Um, and I think that's the difference between maybe somebody who doesn't experience this and someone who does, is that they don't have to do it. They're choosing to do it. And,
Right.
if they didn't, they can move on with their day.
And there's two different types of behavior, if you will. There's like focused, right? So it's like where we're seeing the spots and we just until we've got the clear skin or whatever, that it's like this urge that we can't really control. But then there's like the habitual side as well, where that's maybe we're in the car and we're twiddling our hair or pulling at our hair. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's focused. And really what that is I see a spot, just like you explained,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to pick it. I see something that I want to fix or change, versus some people don't even realize they're doing it.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
it's a habit. My hand came up to my face and I've been picking for the last 30 minutes and I didn't realize it until I start seeing blood on my fingers, for example. Um,
Well, this is it. I guess when it's a problem, it does get quite sore, doesn't it? I mean, it's certainly something that I will hold my hands up and say, see, I'm reaching then to scratch, but skin picking for me, since I think I can trace it back to teenage years where maybe I didn't realize until like my family would say, stop doing that. It's disgusting.
mhm,
And then it would like gross out my friends. And
right.
then I guess you're more aware of it then. So then it does become like this kind of itch you want to scratch.
Yeah.
This like urge, this compulsion. Does it fall under OCD? Because you're an expert in this domain. Is it linked to OCD?
Yeah. So I would say it could be on the same tree,
Mm.
but many people have a BFRB who don't experience OCD. But some people with OCD do it as a compulsion. That when I'm feeling anxious, my brain says, hey, if you start picking or if you start pulling, you feel a little bit better temporarily. And so
Mm.
it kind of, each person's so different on how they might experience it. But
Yeah.
there is a reason they did separate it, because they were saying, hey, not everybody has OCD that experiences this.
Right.
But we could probably see down the family line that maybe somebody had OCD, or maybe even tics and Tourette's or BFRBs, but some of these older generations never talked about
Yeah. Yeah.
it.
Good point. And so could it also be like something that ends up being symptomatic of anxiety? If you're
Yeah,
anxious, then maybe you start doing it and it sort of starts to feel good, or it feels soothing and comforting or whatever. And then it becomes something that escalates.
yeah. I like that you use that word soothing, because that's typically something that we see even just in babies. They can see this behavior happening, babies sitting in their cribs and they're twirling their hair. So like a soothing thing, or they're sucking their thumb.
Yeah.
I usually see it on one extreme or the other. People are very anxious or they're nervous. They've got podcasts they're going to jump onto or whatever it is, or they're kind of bored. And actually, I see that more often than anxiety because I'm just bored and it follows a pattern. Every time I'm on my iPad, I just start twirling my hair or I start picking or I'm driving. Every time I drive, it tends to happen. And I'm just kind of bored. So understimulated or overstimulated are two big categories that I see.
And I don't feel like you ever kind of reach that level of satisfaction that you're aiming for, right? It's like there's that loose bit of skin in your mouth if and you're chewing it, and then it just it gets to the point where it actually really hurts and it's sore, but you're just trying to maybe smooth it over. I feel like that's probably the same if you're a skin picker or spot picker, that you're trying to go for something aesthetically that is smooth, but actually you're doing more harm than good.
Yeah, people get almost like a microsecond of relief in that moment.
Yeah.
Whether it's picking or pulling. And there's a reason that it's not just one. They keep going because they need that next microsecond of relief. And a lot of people know in their brain, like, I should probably stop. I should probably be done. It's hard to stop.
Right. And it's all sounding very similar to addiction as well. Like, I shouldn't be eating that sugary cake, or I shouldn't be drinking that alcoholic beverage or taking those drugs or whatever. It's that same kind of like temporary relief, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and, I think what I look for a lot of people is that whenever I treat people with this, we always have the conversation of like, how much do you actually want to stop doing this behavior? Because most of the time it's not 100%, I never want to do this again. There's a level of, I want to keep doing it, but I also know it's interfering with my life.
Yeah.
So we got to find that balance of, ultimately what I'm trying to say is that there is something positive that they get from doing it, even though there's the negative effects. It's tough.
Yeah. And then shame is a big piece of this as well, right?
Yeah, shame is huge.
Yeah.
One of the things for parents when they're learning, like, how do I help my child or spouse with this, is like, don't talk about it. Essentially,
Really?
Don't bring it up. Don't tell them to stop, because that just brings shame and actually most likely makes them do it more. And so part of the treatment process is all about teaching them to love themselves, take away the shame. If you do it, you do it. If you don't, then you don't. And that's, typical therapy is like, hey, we want to stop doing this behavior. But with this, it's like, yeah, that's an option. But if you're doing it, you're doing it. We want you to be okay with it. But let's find some motivation if you do want to stop it. That way we take all that pressure off.
Yeah. How have you seen it impact your clients in terms of basic living and lifestyle?
I've seen people who are late for work because they're stuck polling or they're picking. They didn't realize the time's been wasted. Or I've seen to the point where some people are hiding. They're hiding their hair. They're wearing bandanas or they're wearing wigs.
Yeah.
Or they're just not going to events anymore. They're not hanging out with their friends because they know they're going to be asking me about what I just did to my face, because it's might be very obvious. And so there's a lot of avoidant behaviors that happen just because, I don't know, they don't want that shame. They don't want to be judged.
Can it ever be something hereditary or like influenced? Like when I was a kid, I'd see my gran kind of not skin picking, but kind of fidgeting with her nails, which is that sort of the area where I pick a bit. I caught my mum doing it like recently as well, not to the level of it being a problem, but it sort of triggered a childhood memory. So I just wonder if it's like something that can be passed down.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely hereditary in terms
Is
of
it?
if, mom or dad have it, there is a chance, but it's not 100%. But one thing that I don't see is more of like a learned behavior, that if I didn't have that trait, hereditary trait, but I noticed my mom skin picking her
Hmm.
whole life, I might not do it because it's just not something my brain's told me to do. I don't care about it.
Hmm.
But if I had that trait, it might play a factor into it. But I do get that question a lot from people, is that I need to stop doing this because my kids are watching. I don't want them to do this behavior.
Yeah.
But we kind of think about other aspects of our life that our parents have done. If that was always true, why don't we do all the things our parents always did?
Yeah.
But we don't, because we have autonomy. We get to choose and pick what we want to do or what we don't want to do.
Good point. I was watching your YouTube videos on this subject, and I'd love you to talk a little bit about SCAMP,
Hmm. Yeah.
sensory, cognitive, affective, motor place. Was it motor?
Motor. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. What is SCAMP?
So, so scam, as part of the treatment process, we used to, well, I mean, right now what we do is we do awareness training. I want people to be really aware of why it's happening, when it's happening. And so SCAMP, we look for the S, the sensory. What are you feeling when you do this? Are you specifically looking for a spot? Is there a feeling that you're trying to achieve when you're picking, you're pulling, are you nail biting, whatever it is? And then the C, cognitive. What thoughts are you having in those moments? Are you saying, I'm just going to do it once? Maybe it's, I hate myself. I don't care if I do this. No one cares about me. What are the thoughts? Are you just bored? Affective. So emotional feelings. Am I feeling shame? Am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling bored? The motor. So how did my hand even get to this spot in the first place? If I'm biting, my nails are, you know, usually it follows a pattern. So we want to know, oh yeah, every time I sit on the couch, I'm watching TV, my right hand goes up to my mouth. It's always my index finger first. We actually try to be very specific of like, how does your hand get there? And then the place. Where am I at when it happens the most? Am I always in my bedroom? I'm looking in the mirror right after the shower. It's in the bathroom, I'm in the car. There's tracking forms that we give people that tracks all of these different things. And it can be a moment where they've already picked or pulled and we just try to figure out what happened. Or it's that urge to do it. Like, where am I right now? What do I feel?
Mm.
And we use all of these so we can create treatment. And I don't know if you want me to go through what that treatment looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. And just in case I forget to tell you this later, I was talking to a psychologist that was very interested in this area based in the UK. And she said there isn't too much signposting specifically in the UK that we can point to get help, for people that are really, this is becoming like quite compromising to their lifestyle and their day-to-day living. There isn't very much. So anything you can share that would help in that respect, it just seems to be, that limited in resources, apparently.
Yeah. Well, definitely even in the States, United States here, there are only a few of us that actually treat this, even though there
Right.
are so many that struggle with it.
The stats
Um,
are, it's not like it's this small thing. It is something that does affect a lot of people. Why do you think there's not more people like you then that are keen to help others with this?
it's a good question. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people start working with OCD and then they realize, wow, this actually seems to be a piece that people keep calling me for.
Is that what happened with you?
It is. Yep.
Yeah.
I realize there's no one that's doing this. In my area, I might be one of the only ones that actually sees children with this. And I love it. The treatment actually works. I think that's the cool part about it. It's just knowing what to do.
Right.
Um,
Okay. So on that then, going back to some things that we could do. So we've noticed that we've got a problem and we've tracked it. Then what do we do with that information?
yeah. So we become investigators. I look at, let's find all the patterns and let's write them out. And so they might have tracked for a week or two, and we found, hey, wow, I'm always in my bedroom right after school, sit on my in my desk, and I start pulling. Or wow, every time I drive, my left hand is up on the windowsill or the window, and my hand's up to my hair. Man, it's always when I'm bored. It's not really when I'm anxious. Once we find all these patterns, we create what's called a competing response. What
Oh,
that means is I need to get in the way of this thing before it gets me. Meaning, I'm going to create a, I'm going to do a different behavior in
right.
that specific moment. So I would feel the urge. My body said, okay, I noticed I'm in my bedroom right after school. So I'm going to go to my bedroom right after school, sit in that spot where I normally feel that urge,
Yeah.
and I'm going to do something different. And so what I might do, so back in the day, they would just say, make a fist. That was for everything. Make a fist and that's it.
Okay.
That still kind of works. But
Right.
what it is we make something really meaningful. I could make a fist. I could play with a fidget. I could find something that simulates that same feeling that I would get from pulling or picking. Um,
Okay.
it could be just holding my wrist. It could be, doing something with my fingers. But
Mm.
the idea is from 0 to 10, how badly do I want to do this behavior? Because usually that urge starts going up and up and up and up. And I'm going to sit there and I'm going to keep playing with this fidget, maybe until that feeling goes down by at least half or more. And then what happens is the brain learns, wow, I told you the only way you were going to get out of this feeling was to do the behavior. And you proved to me that that was wrong. And so maybe I need to stop giving you these urges to keep doing it. But it doesn't just happen in one
No.
go. It's practice, 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 practice. So
Yeah. That is really
yeah,
helpful. It's like a kind of you're putting up I think of a shield when you feel it
yeah.
on. Yeah.
Well, and the mindset makes a difference too, because we're not sitting there saying, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it,
Yeah.
because then that just brings that pressure.
Yeah.
Instead, it's like, hey, I could do it. I'm just choosing not to. It's almost like playing the opposite game. Like, I love these feelings. Oh, I love this urge right now. It's
Mhm.
like, you're going to feel this all day. Yeah, maybe I will. I don't know. We'll see. It's kind of like, how can I take that value away from this either threats or feelings or thoughts
Mm.
and almost enjoy that moment? And when the person puts the fidget down or whatever they choose to do, it's celebrating that moment. Good for you. I was able to go through that urge. If I pulled or picked during that moment, cool, I did it. But let me learn from that moment that, hey, next time this is what I'm going to do.
Mm.
Let's use it as a learning opportunity instead of a shaming moment.
Yeah. Do you remember I'm just thinking back to like when I was a kid, for anybody that was a nail biter, there was this like lacquer that you could paint on
Yeah.
your nails and around your skin that would taste absolutely disgusting. But I think like people that had like that chronic impulse, they would just bite through the disgusting taste, wouldn't they?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the problem is there has to be some motivation to actually want to stop.
Mm.
And it has to be pretty strong because I have a lot of parents bring kids into my office. They wanted to stop, but the kids are like, I don't care if I keep doing this. I'll keep pulling, whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean, there has to be incentive after incentive to get them to do it. But that's a huge piece of treatment is like, it has to be strong enough for you to feel this uncomfortable feeling and know that you're not going to be perfect with it. We
Mm.
have to come up with a real good reason why you're doing this and what your future looks like. Does it belong in your future? Doesn't always have to be 100%. I never get to pick again.
Mm.
Sometimes some people choose for my treatment. I'm only going to pick when I'm at home, but I don't want to pick in front of people. And it's like, cool. If that's what you want to do, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's not always an all or nothing type of thing.
I suppose it might look a bit interesting if you're in front of people and you brought a fidget with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Pop it.
Some people, we talk about fidgets a lot, but there are blockers, is what they call them. Kind of like you mentioned with the fingernail paint or whatever they put.
Yeah.
That would be an example of I know I feel this urge really strongly in the car. So before I get in the car, I'm going to put this little like thing on my finger. It could be a Band-Aid, for example. I'm going to put a Band-Aid on my while I'm driving in the car. And it's not to just forget about it. It's actually just like feel the moment, be with it, remember what I'm doing, not to avoid it, but to say, hey, I'm going to put this blocker on just so I can be in the moment. And then I'm going to take it off when I get to the other, wherever I'm going.
What would you be your advice then for somebody that, say, maybe they've got like already some kind of scab, or they've got, I'm trying to think of how to say this in a way that's not too gross, but like something that they want to fix, basically. So it could be like that spot, that scab, that, bit of loose skin in the mouth. But then it's just for somebody that has those compulsions, I think that's maybe even harder, because it's like you just want to get rid of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Spot, the scab, the skin. So
Yeah.
I don't know if having a poppet, say, would be enough to control that impulse. Maybe
It's
not.
tough because some people, actually most, will say, once I start, I don't stop. And
Yeah.
so I'm not able to just pick that one, even if it is a thing that most people would probably pick. Sometimes we test it out and we say, let's come up with some realistic expectations for you, new patterns that you're going to do. That let's try it. You pick that one spot that most people would pick. You got some skin hanging off the side of your face.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do it and you realize that you just keep picking after that, it might not be something you do. So let's change the pattern to you can only use your knuckles. You're going to use your knuckles to kind of push that spot, but your fingers don't get to touch it because we know that urge is going to be there. It's so tough. Maybe put a pimple patch on there, or we know things will heal. I think that's part of the process, is like, I gotta sit with that uncomfortable feeling and just, this is my thing. This is what I gotta do.
Yeah.
But it gets easier. I think that's the part people have to realize later, is that if I keep practicing this, that urge is so small that I can go without it.
So then, because I've heard you talk about this in your videos as well, like the tools that we use to aid the compulsion, like tweezers or some kind of needle or whatever, do we have to kind of get them out of the home?
My first response usually is, let's keep them and see if you can feel the urge without using them. If you keep finding yourself using the tweezers, maybe we give it to mom or we give it to your spouse, just for a little bit, because realistically, you're not going to go your whole life probably without finding tweezers or using them. So I don't want to just say, you
want a monobrow, right?
Yeah. Sorry, my therapist said I can never use tweezers.
Yes.
But I want people to be empowered by saying, I have this thing right here. I'm going to actually do a competing response instead.
Yeah.
Maybe you can hold the tweezers and flip them around in my hand as the competing response. And then put them down to show myself that, like, look how strong you are for doing this thing.
Yeah. You're certainly like giving us suggestions on things I think, well, I certainly wouldn't think of. I mean, one thing I've personally tried is, and I think it's part of it, is where I'm living right now, it's the bathroom lights with the mirror. So if I can see everything, I can see every single pore. And for me, because that is my weakness, is that with any, the skin picking or whatever, then I sometimes turn my mirror around so that I can't see my reflection, which seems really sad and drastic, but it's like a way for me not to like really destroy my face.
Yeah. That's a great example of how we would use scamp, that we know that mirror is a trigger. And so we say, perfect, let's come up with a plan for you to walk into that bathroom. Maybe we've installed dimmer lights so you can barely even see yourself while you're in the mirror. Makes it easier for you to feel that urge.
Right. Yeah.
Or I've had people even put saran wrap over their mirror, where it's like they can barely see themselves, but just enough to get ready.
I was going to say, how did they put the makeup on if they're, if they wear makeup?
Or we cut out a little spot from it so they can only see just a little sliver of the mirror. So they have to move their face around to make it work. Or we could create, I guess, rules that might say, I can never be this close to the mirror. I'm always, a little bit further away so that I can't micro focus on something on my face. Or I might have a timer that goes off. It says 60 seconds. I'm putting my makeup on here. I only get 60 seconds. Now I got to move over to this part of my face and then do it this side.
Yeah.
It's just changing patterns, feeling the feeling and being empowered by, I guess, resisting the urge.
Mm. So is this the comb model? Is this what you refer to as
Yep.
the comb model? Yeah. I feel like we're kind of scratched the surface here and sorry, pun not intended. You've got a course, right, that we're going to point to and add the link in the episode show notes. Is this what you're sort of diving into in the course for people that are resonating? And is it a course that applies to all of the different BFRBs?
Yes. The course is, I first created it because I have such a long waiting list. And most other people do as well who treat this. And it's like, I just want someone to know what to do. So I take them through video by video. This is how you do the treatment. Here's a worksheet you're going to be using to track. Here's how you're going to create your competing responses. Here's hundreds of ideas of things you can try.
Yeah.
And here's who's going to keep you accountable. You know, things like that. Of here's how you're going to get in the right mindset. This is how you can practice every single day. And just take people through that treatment.
If it's something that somebody's been struggling with for like, maybe they come to you and they're like, Nate, this has been affecting my life for the last 10, 20 years. When it's like, especially if it's habitual and it's, you know, you've been doing it for that long, can you break that pattern by doing some of the things you've just talked about?
Definitely.
Really?
I've had people who were in their 60s, upper 60s, who were like, I've been doing this since I was in third grade. And they succeed. But the hard part is I have to make it worth it for me to want to work on this thing. It can't just be, I kind of want to stop. It has to be, this is how it's impacting my life. This is how much time I'm willing to devote on this thing. And it can be broken. It's learning to say, I got to feel uncomfortable to feel better. And I'm willing to do it.
Wow. Well, I think that's a nice way to kind of wrap things up on a positive note. I mean, is there anything that you'd like to add that maybe I've not asked you about?
Yeah, I think for anybody who's listening, it's something you can get better from if you really want it. But at the same time, it is that weird concept of like, but if you want to keep doing it, that's fine too. Like, love yourself. Even if you're doing it, you're not broken. Nothing's wrong with you.
Yeah.
It's just something you want to do if you want to do. If you don't, that's cool. There's a lot of life to be lived, and feeling shameful for something that you're doing is just, it's not worth it. Especially when it's something like this that the brain is already developed in this way to kind of make you feel those urges.
So then what would be your advice to anybody listening who isn't the skin picker or the hair puller, who is somebody that is like the friend or the parent or the spouse of the skin picker? Because it's not like it's just a bad habit. It's deeper than that, isn't it? And I think that, oh, just stop, you grossing me out, actually is not that helpful.
Yeah, that's the normal response, which I totally get. Just stop. Instead, it's like, I need to love this person no matter what. I'm not going to have expectations for them in the sense of they're going to stop or they're not you. I'm going to love them more if they stop. It's actually your job is to support them in treatment if that's what they're choosing to do. Yeah. Meaning you don't say stop. You might say, hey, how can I help you with some competing responses? Or can I sit with you while you're doing this? If you catch them not doing treatment, we're not shaming them. We're not sending them messages, hey, I noticed you did this, unless that's what they want you to do. But sometimes I have people do just a daily check-in. Thumbs up, thumbs down. How did it go today? What did you work on that you feel like you're really proud of? What's something you could work on tomorrow? And it could be a 30-second conversation every day. This is the only time we ever talk about it. And I love you if you do it, if you don't.
Yeah. Brilliant stuff. Well, I can't let you go before we do the Happier Life Project's last 5 in 5. So this is the same 5 questions that I ask every guest to conclude the episode. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Excellent. When and where are you at your happiest?
Oh, wow. I think just hanging out with my kids, where we just have nothing to do. We're just hanging out and I'm listening to them talk.
Nice. What's your favorite thing to do that nourishes your mental health?
Oh, wow. I picked up building Legos recently, which sounds really strange. I've never done it in my entire life, but I started doing Legos. I watch a TV show. I've got my little thing here and I just follow the instructions. And I don't know, it feels good to just do something, build something and be like, I did this.
Yeah. My friend actually was telling me he has gotten into it as well. Like he says, it's really like kind of like an act of mindfulness in a way. Yeah.
Yeah.
What piece of advice do you now know that you wished somebody would have told you earlier that would have made you a happier person?
I think about this a lot actually. When I was in school, elementary school or middle school, I always waited for other people to come to me to make friends or to ask me to hang out or play. I wish the skills that I know now, I would have come back to that person and be like, you have to be the one that goes up to them and says, hey, let's do this. Hey, you want to hang out? Hey, you want to come to my house? Hey, you want to whatever.
Yeah.
Get out of your comfort zone and go make it happen. Because I think we're all waiting for other people to make it happen. And we just got to be uncomfortable. And then things work out.
What is the most important one thing that needs to change to make the world a happier place?
Ooh, I think people need to give others the benefit of the doubt. I think we are really good at following the first thought that comes to our mind. But when we take a second to actually challenge that thought, I feel like things are better, happier. So where someone might cut me off in the road and my first thought is like, that person's such a jerk or whatever. And like, I'm just going throughout my day with anger and a thought that might not even be accurate, where I could say, actually, that person maybe didn't even see me. Maybe they had no idea. Maybe they're headed to the hospital because they're having a baby. Maybe their turning signal is broken. Maybe this. Here's all these other options. Let's just give people more grace for living life.
Yeah. Okay, last question. What is a simple, actionable first step we can take when it comes to understanding and healing from, if we suffer from it, body-focused repetitive behavior that will help us on our mission to building a happier life?
Ooh.
Could be something we've already covered as well.
Yeah. I think just being aware of why it's happening, when it's happening, and not just trying to think our way through it, but thinking more, what behavior can I do differently that's going to change what I'm doing now? Because we can't think our way through it. We have to do something different.
Yeah.
And I think that's through most things in life. What behavior am I going to take that's going to change this thing?
Yeah. Awesome. I'm going to get a pop-it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So thank you. Brilliant. So I'm going to add all this to the episode show notes and in the My Possible Self app as well. YouTube, you've got some great videos. So the link to that is OCD and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
The self-directed course that we refer to for hair pulling and skin picking, that's on your website, right? OCD-anxiety.com. And then you've got quite a big presence on Instagram as well with lots of helpful advice. And that's OCD and Anxiety Online.
Yep.
Yep. And like I said, we'll add all that to the episode show notes as well. So people can literally click on the links. Nate, thank you so much for today. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I love talking about this stuff and ways people can feel better. Yeah. I appreciate you spreading awareness.
Thank you again, Nate. And thank you to you, my friend, for listening to this episode of the Happier Life Project podcast. Just as always, one more minute of your precious time before we sign off to run through the important housekeeping. If you are suffering with your mental health, there is a crisis button on the My Possible Self app, which will signpost you to the correct information for immediate expert advice. Those of you who are listening on one of the podcast platforms, the My Possible Self app is completely free to download, so you don't need to worry about it costing you anything. If you are in crisis or you think you may have an emergency, please do call your doctor or the emergency services immediately. The views expressed in this podcast are solely those of the interviewer, which is me, and the interviewees. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered as a substitute for professional or medical advice. Our partners at the Priory Healthcare are not involved in the production or content of this podcast. I've said it before, and for sure I'll say it again, but if you are listening on one of the podcast platforms and you do find this show helpful, please do subscribe and leave a review. It really helps us to grow. It helps us to get into the algorithm of these giant platforms and to help us spread the word and help others with their mental health. And to find and follow us on social media, if you're not already there, we are most active on Instagram, and you can find us at My Possible Self, and I've been at Radio Gabby. Do take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.